that we will be hosting as a part of IPF's 3I Expo 2022, which will be held on March 25th and 26th at Nehru Center in Mumbai. We will share more details about 3I Expo later today in this webinar. Today, we will also witness the digital launch of 50th IPF Annual Edition. Before we begin today's proceeding, let me share a few words about Industrial Product Finder. Industrial Product Finder, popularly known as IPF, is celebrating the Golden Jubilee year this year. With over 1 lakh readership every month through its magazine and website, that is ipfonline.com, which offers an assortment of news, interviews, well-researched articles, and product information. Recently, IPF website was revamped for giving a better user experience to our readers. In addition, Industrial Product Finder also annually presents IPF Industrial Excellence Award for innovative products, fastest growing companies, best entrepreneur, and emerging startups. Besides, IPF also offers industry news on WhatsApp, which is popularly known as iNow, for readers who want industry updates on the move. Every year, Industrial Product Finder publishes the annual edition. This year's annual edition happens to be the Golden Jubilee edition, featuring more than 250 products and comprising viewpoints of more than 25 industry experts. With this, I would like to call upon Mr. Pratap Patode, Editor-in-Chief of IPF, to unveil IPF Annual 2022 and share a few words. Over to you, Mr. Patode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the webinar on Making India Atmanirbhar with Industry 4.0. So before I unveil a few words about this momentous occasion, so India Today magazine that all of you know, it began publishing in 1975. Business India began publishing in 1978. Business World began publishing in 1981. The Week in 82, Frontline 84, Dalal Street Journal 86, and Outlook in 1995. But Industrial Products Finder began publishing in 1972, 50 years ago. It's older than all these magazines that I just mentioned. And therefore, the forthcoming annual edition is a rare edition, with slogans like Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, China +1. The cry for strengthening India's manufacturing sector is definitely underscoring its importance. The IPF Annual Edition 2022 features over 250 latest projects and technologies that can help in building a stronger manufacturing sector in India. Like Rakesh mentioned, we have 25 industry experts who have contributed their valuable articles in this edition. This contains the journey of India in the last 50 years, what it means to be Atmanirbhar, opportunities for India in the volatile and uncertain global marketplace, how to transform India sustainably and digitally, and need for skill development to build a future-ready workforce. All of these are extremely important for this journey. And we have several industry experts contributing to this. See, on the threshold of our golden anniversary, we are also hosting the 3I Expo, about which you will hear shortly, which is a physical event in Mumbai on March 25th, 26th, and aimed at showcasing Indian manufacturing industry's next leap into automation and digitization, industry IoT, all required for preparation for Industry 4.0. At this event, those technologies products will be on display that will help you transform your factory and industrial units or machineries to win benefits of Industry 4.0. The event has Maharashtra Industrial Development Corporation MIDC as the presenting partner and Automation Industry Association as the knowledge partner. Recently, Reliance bought a 54% stake in a robotics company, Adverb Technologies, for $132 million. This Noida-based company has deployed robots for 100 customers, including Asian Paints, Marico, Pepsi, etc. In November 2019, Schneider Electric opened its second smart factory in Hyderabad. With such rising development of smart factories, the market for smart manufacturing in India is expected to propel. Various technologies are using industrial IoT to improve the functioning of the processes. These devices and technologies comprise sensors, RFID, industrial robotics, smart meters, cameras, networking technology, and so on. The use of industrial IoT in these devices and technologies help in analyzing the data collected from various devices and enable effective decision making. The smart manufacturing market is classified on the basis of component, technology, and end-use industry. Based on component, the market is bifurcated into hardware and software and services. And based on technology, the market is segmented into PLCs, SCADA, machine vision, DCS, PLM, and others. Based on end-use industry, the market is segregated into healthcare, automotive, aerospace, defense, oil and gas, food and beverages, and others. Among these end-use industries, the automobile industry is contributing significantly to the market growth. So we are unveiling this at a time when we need to all forget the last 2 years of gloom and doom through the pandemic. A new sun is on the horizon. We need to see that we are going to enable our industry, our manufacturing industry, which will form a stronger backbone of our GDP. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to unveil what we have been waiting for the Golden Jubilee Annual Issue 2022. Thank you.
Sunil, can we unveil the annual issue?
Hello, it's Spencer.
Okay. Hello. Yeah. So as Mr. Patode has mentioned that IPF has been in this industry since 1972, and IPF has been playing a pivotal role in providing information about latest products and technology to fulfill the needs of Indian manufacturers. With manufacturing sector getting ready for the fourth industrial revolution, that is Industry 4.0, Industrial Product Finder is all set to be a trusted partner in this journey. As a part of these efforts, IPF will be hosting a 3i Expo 2022 in March to bring all the stakeholders of the Industry 4.0 on one platform. 3i stands for IPF for Industry 4.0 and innovations. Let me now request Ms. Rushali to share more details about 3i Expo. Over to you, Rushali.
Thank you, Rakesh. So, good afternoon and welcome to this first webinar in the series where, we are all set to talk about how technology and how Industry 4.0 is the next in business for all the industries across, especially for manufacturing. And with this thought, once we finish 50 years, we thought we should come up we have been working towards providing a voice for the industry where we bring the technology providers and the manufacturing sector together. And with this experience at back, we thought, why not create a platform where we can have this opportunity for everyone to come together through an Expo conference and awards. So we just heard about Industrial Product Finder, and this is the IPF online website that we have relaunched. You can please visit ipfonline.com for products for industry news, etc. As Rakesh has already mentioned, we have a WhatsApp group where we provide live updates on news, etc. Please grab a screenshot of this and you can give a missed call on the number which is featured, and you can get connected to the community through a WhatsApp group. Apart from the monthly news and newsletters, we also cater through expos, conferences, seminars, and awards. In the last year, where we actually couldn't come out and meet everyone personally, we did over 30 successful online events, which were attended by all the industry stalwarts and decision makers. Once we had a little window where we could actually meet everyone personally. From September 21, we did various events like Cement Expo in Delhi, India Construction Festival in Mumbai, annual awards, Construction World Annual Awards in Mumbai, Equipment India Annual Awards in Mumbai, and Construction World Architect and Builder Awards, along with Construction World Design Build Conclave in Ahmedabad and Bangalore. So we have a similar plan going forward as well, where we plan to host a steel conference called Make in Steel in Delhi next month, and obviously the 3i Expo on 25-26 March in Mumbai again. We all have been talking about Industry 4.0, and 3i Expo is the exact platform where we plan to bring the leadership from Indian manufacturing, operations, engineering, quality, supply chain together with the technology leaders to discuss current trends, strategies, and how these Industry 4.0 practices can be really implemented and how they can accelerate productivity. So with this motive behind, we planned to launch 3i Expo in the month of March. Obviously, here we can look at new technology, prepare an organization for this transformational change. We can meet with the suppliers, solution providers, and expand our knowledge through a very excellent agenda that has been built. And we are connecting with the industry experts to get them on board to share their experience and expertise to tackle all the questions and challenges that we have around Industry 4.0. As already mentioned by Mr. Padode, we already have MIDC on board as our presenting partner and Automation Industry Association as our knowledge partner. The past few chief guests that we have had and the supporting associations. Our work has actually been widely promoted and accepted all through the industry, and we have had good testimonials from various industry leaders. This is a small testimony from Mr. Shashi Tharoor and Dr. Sridhar Ganesan. Talking about 3i Expo, it'll be a mix of knowledge sharing sessions, industry keynotes. We would want to talk about the future of manufacturing and Industry 4.0. in the panel discussion. We want to talk about capital costs and profitability in an expert perspective. Automation, what are the advantages, challenges, and what are the practical solutions? So we have been talking about Industry 4.0 all through long, but here we really want to come up with practical solutions and how this can be implemented in our day-to-day lives. On day 2, we want to talk about a policy intervention and how we can actually make India the next manufacturing hub. This is followed by the 6th edition of IPF Industrial Excellence Awards. The nominations for this awards are already in progress, and I'm requesting everyone to connect with us in case you want to know more about the agenda, about the awards, and about the Expo in all. Prior to the Expo, we thought of connecting with the industry with a series of webinars, like the first webinar today on Atmanirbhar Bharat, the story so far. We plan to do 2 more webinars on how technology is an enabler for manufacturing sustainability, and how Indian manufacturing sector and how can we promote the new age skills for Make in India. With this, I conclude my presentation on 3i Expo, and please grab a screenshot and you can connect with my colleague Farid to know more about the 3i Expo, the conference, and the awards in total. Thank you. Thank you so much. Rakesh, over to you.
Thank you, Vrushali, for your excellent presentation. And I believe the 3i Expo will be a starting point for IPF to help, or rather be a bridge between the industry and academia and the policymaker. So with this, let's move on to our next agenda, rather the main agenda of the day, that is the panel discussion. The government, as you know, is aiming to increase the contribution of manufacturing to India's GDP from present 17% to 25% by 2025. Post-COVID, global companies are looking at alternate destinations for sourcing raw materials and manufacturing their products. This presents a very good prospect for India to increase its share in the global trade. Government of India has also launched Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme with an intention to make India self-sufficient and to be a leading supplier to the global manufacturing industry. Today's panel discussion will try to understand what it really takes to make India a global manufacturing hub. It will also shed light on the role of automation and modern manufacturing technologies to achieve the goals of Atmanirbhar Bharat mission. Before we begin the panel discussion, let me introduce our esteemed panelists for today's discussion. Can we have all the panelists on the screen, please? We have Mr. Anup Wadhwa, who is the Director of Automation Industry Association. He is an evangelist of Samarth Udyog ecosystem that integrates the efforts of different agencies in government and academia. Mr. Wadhwa has served on government and UNIDO expert committees related to country-relevant initiatives in Industry 4.0, with special focus on interdisciplinary cooperation. Then we have Mr. Milind Kulshestra. He is the founder and CEO of AI Kairos. He established AI Kairos with an aim to simplify Industry 4.0 technology for enabling a more responsive and sustainable manufacturing ecosystem in India. Prior to launching his own company, Mr. Kulshestra worked at ABB Singapore. Then we have Mr. Samiran Ghoshal, who is the senior partner of AMROP. He is a global business transformation and digital technology leader with over 2 decades of leadership experience in consulting and technology companies across India, APAC, and UV markets. Mr. Ghoshal's past professional association also include IBM, EY, Wipro, SAP, and Tata Steel. Then we have Mr. Sanjay Deshmukh, who is the head of global pre-sales at Findability Sciences, a global provider of artificial intelligence solutions for digital transformation of traditional enterprises. He is an AI and wild data technology expert and has partnered with Fortune 500 companies in their data to AI journey. Prior to Findability Sciences, Mr. Deshmukh was associated with organizations like Oracle and Citibank. And finally, we have Mr. J. Sundaraman, who is a senior vice president and head Wipro Pari Automation Business. He is responsible for positioning the company as a key player in the industrial automation space. Mr. Sundar has over 32 years of experience in leadership roles across multiple functions. Prior to joining Wipro Infrastructure Engineering, he has worked with Precol Limited, JCB India, Whirlpool India, etc. So on behalf of ASAP and IPF, I would welcome all you for this engaging panel discussion. To set the ball rolling, I would like to know from Mr. Sundar, how do you analyze the present status of India's manufacturing sector, basically in terms of its global competitiveness and adoption of modern and advanced technology?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rakesh, and thank you, co-panelists and the participants, for giving this opportunity to engage with all of you. When we talk about manufacturing industry and manufacturing sector, we cannot escape comparing China. That is inevitable because as Pratap mentioned, China plus one strategy, as it has to become realization into that, we need to understand what are the strengths, what are the areas which China focused in scaling up in the manufacturing industry. When we talk about global scale, every minute 50 cars are getting produced in China. The market is about 26 million cars in comparison to 3 million car market annual volume for India. So it's a scale of 1:10, whatever we compare, whatever we talk when it comes to China. As we talk about robots, Mr. Wadhwa will also share his perspective. China has 200 robots per 10,000 employees in the factories, whereas the robot penetration is as low as 4 robots per 10,000 employees in India. So the gap is very wide when it comes to the manufacturing sector in India to reach to a global scale. But are we in the right direction? Yes, we are all in the right direction. We have been doing the right things over the decades in moving the scale up in the manufacturing sector. We have demonstrated successfully in the service sector. Whatever scale up that we talk, we have demonstrated significantly. Even during this COVID period and the pandemic period, the vaccine production native in the country, the vaccination program, as we reach out to the market, as we reach out to the entire length and breadth of the country, we were able to demonstrate the scalability that we can do. Service sector scalability, whatever deployment and the strengths that the country has, we have seen it. Even UPI, as it is launched, it's an absolute global scale. The digital payments, what is happening in India, and this is to a very different significant level that we are able to demonstrate. But when it comes to manufacturing, key elements are automation and digitization, and these two areas, if we don't focus relentlessly, we will miss the boat. And why automation? Again, of course, as we go down, we'll discuss. But the manufacturing sector has been missing this link on the automation, which is where I think our focus has to continuously remain. And we have the capability, we have the competency. Industry 4.0 is a natural platform where we will be able to leapfrog. And I'm sure that we have proved it in two-wheeler. Two-wheeler industry, we produce 20 million vehicles annually. And the same scale in every segment we'll be able to bring in, because productivity is going to be the key in ensuring global scale, and the manufacturing industry very much needs it. Thank you, Mr. Rakesh.
Thank you, Mr. Sundar, for your opening remarks. Mr. Ghoshal, what would you like to give? Would you like to give a different kind of a perspective to this whole issue?
No, so thank you, Rakesh, and thank you, fellow panelists. I'll probably add on what probably Sundar said. I think he gave a holistic view in terms of overall competitiveness and probably, I would say, quite a bit of lack of scale. I would say even the reach and where China has reached. And frankly speaking, it is not just us, the rest of the world are discovering also. Now, I'll put a little different twist to this. The question is, when you are fighting against a Goliath, you cannot fight frontally because you'll get beaten. Okay, so probably we should analyze this competitiveness sector by sector or specific area and say, hey, which sectors or which areas we have a chance to actually outflank. And that can be on a few areas. One is there might be sectors where we are present in some part of the value chain. When you talk of global supply chain, there's a global value chain which is already functioning. Now, if China is capturing some part, that's fine. But some sectors, we also naturally have some presence and strength. For example, the automotive sector, right? And for example, the pharmaceutical value chain, automotive value chain. There are similar other value chains. Now, the way we should look at is look at how we can go into the areas where we already have connects with the OEMs, where the supply chain and the value chain starts, and probably see how we can then quickly fill in the gaps because people may be looking at replacing China or getting an alternate source. So one specific point on specifically these two value chains, and there are quite a few others also. I'll give examples. For example, in the automotive value chain, if you look at India, India is very big in the whole automotive tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. But the fact of the matter is, nearly 65 to 75% of that is linked to the engine and the entire production linked to that. Either we are making forgings or making some parts of it and all that. Now, with the EV coming in, they are all under threat anyway. So it is naturally coming in because the pillars are also very aggressive and very eager to fill in the gaps. On the pharmaceutical side, while we have very strong generics, we understand the whole process, but the base chemicals, which goes into the pharmaceutical, China dominates nearly 80-90% of that. So there again, people want alternates. The third value chain is the food supply, and I'll give example where Australia comes in. Australia wants an alternate for China. Australia has huge dependence on China as the end consumer also. So these are some of the areas, if we look at industry specific and say, hey, here is what we can fill in the gaps. Here is how we can increase productivity and use the technologies to then quickly able to sort of compete with China. We'll make a better chance of succeeding than going with a broad brush across industries.
Thank you, Mr. Ghoshal, for that excellent remarks over how do we increase the competitiveness globally. As I mentioned earlier, also Atmanirbhar Bharat, before that, Make in India attempts to make India a global manufacturing hub. So, Mr. Anup Wadhwa, according to you, what are the key hurdles in achieving this goal?
Firstly, I think Atmanirbhar Bharat is a much wider flank than the Make in India. What it really means is that the stuff which is essential for the country, we have to make sure that we are self-reliant and we make that in India. So obviously, if you start with various sectors and, many of the sectors which I mentioned will be a combination of manufacturing and service. So things like the energy sector, the defense sector, the food sector, the pharma sector, transportation, these are all very, very vital for us, and we have to have that kind of self-sufficiency. We have also seen that the core sectors of the economy, like this metals, the mining, the cement are also very, very essential. But let's pause back a little and say that should we be competing, keeping our uniqueness in mind? I do agree with Samiran that, we have sectoral advantages and sectoral disadvantages. That's one. But I also think that the Indian market needs certain products which perhaps the world is not looking at. And we can make a jolly good show out there. So there are two instances which come to my mind. One is when we talk about the automotive sector. While all the energy is going in the four-wheelers, because the rest of the world is doing that, I still don't see any change in our bicycle. I still don't see any change in our auto rickshaw. Now, what does that mean? It's not just about manufacturing. I think the whole concept of serving a consumer from design to the manufacture and the usability, that requires a certain ability. And if we can't address 2-3 very small examples I've given, I think it's a serious cause for reflection. Maybe we are trying to copy the rest of the world, and maybe we are not looking at what the Indians need. Similarly, if you look at other areas, products for irrigation, again, India has certain unique requirements. So Atmanirbhar really stems from the fact that you rely on your ability to sense what's around you. There are many solutions for our rural areas, which we haven't looked like. So robots was mentioned by Sundar. It's not just robots on the shop floor. I think we could even have robots to clean the streets. And that could be designed with an Indian ethos. Today we have the jhadu, but what a difference, how many miles we need to cross between the jhadu and an automated street cleaner. So that really brings me to, two hurdles. One is, are we looking at an ability to create value? We all talk about value creation, supply chain, etc. But I think just if we look around us, there are so many opportunities, and there are, I think, the pride to capture value is prerogative and is primary for us to succeed there. Second, I would say, is on the soft side. As a society, do we give recognition to jobs on the shop floor? I think there was a time, when I was privy to certain townships, like the railways, like the Bharat Heavy Electricals, the Indian Oils. The workers were given a holistic environment. They did not worry about housing. They did not worry about schools. They did not worry about health. Everything for their families was taken care at affordable prices. And all the officers and all the artisans were completely, focused on their job. And it was a great culture to see. That unfortunately has remained stagnant. And in the private sector, only a few like the Tatas. But all the new age jobs, I think we are seeing they are going more for, the entertainment business. They are going for IT-based business. I've not seen anybody saying that, with pride that my son actually runs a lathe machine. And that's something which as a society we need to see. You can't have the pride of being a manufacturing nation without taking pride in activities which happen on the shop floor. So that's on the soft side. I think as we go on, we can add more thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wadhwa. And it was really nice to hear from you about the soft side of the whole scheme of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Mr. Kulkshetra, would you like to add to what Mr. Wadhwa said, especially in terms of challenges to achieve the Atmanirbhar Bharat mission?
Actually, I don't think so. The words of wisdom of Mr. Wadhwa, anybody can compliment. And I think he has actually given the grassroots problem which is there in our country. Because the kind of environment he's talking about is very important for people to work with the focus of doing good for the nation, not about themselves. So from my side, maybe I'll take it more towards Industry 4.0 and the hurdles which we are talking about. And I can only say that I expect more questions on hurdles only, because when we started our startup, we got launched at the wrong time when COVID has hit. We have seen few of the challenges. So what we understand is that India is looking by 2030 to be, this is a decade which is going to be very important for us to hit the 500 billion USD impact globally. But let's come to the fundamentals of our government and private sector relationship here. I think that's going to be key to achieve, whatever stage we want to, because I can say that Industry 4.0 itself is a challenge which will take a lot of time to reach. There are required to be initiatives like Industry 4.0 has to become from cost advantage to building capabilities for any manufacturing unit. It involves workforce skilling, innovation, quality, and a sustainability factor, which is becoming very important globally. We have to be looking at the global level. If I can just bring out Industry 4.0, it's not about a tool which can be put and it does the thing. It's an innovation where every solution is specific to the particular manufacturing unit we are talking about. It has got AI, IoT, cloud computing, augmented reality, drones, and everything is not for everybody as an advantage. So we have to look at it very holistically. Technology for accelerating the integration with the global value chain is another aspect which has to evolve through Industry 4.0. Maybe we are looking at establishing manufacturing capacities at a faster rate than what we have got today. Scenario is much tougher actually on the ground. If I can bring out the practical aspect which I have observed, everybody needs to understand that we have ongoing disruptions happening because of COVID. Various manufacturing units have been adversely affected. So talking about Industry 4.2, people who are just about surviving, I think we have a great problem here, which I think has to be addressed first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kulshrestha. Mr. Ghoshal, coming back to you again, post-COVID world seems to be very different from what it was before. And with lots of geopolitical changes that we know, and also the supply chain disruptions that has caused. So given this has a background, Mr. Ghoshal, what opportunities it presents to manufacturing companies in India?
Okay, so I think this question is probably a little more strategic in nature than probably pure technology or I would say replacement issue. So I'll put a little different hat because as I was explaining, in CII, I was part of a similar committee and we were discussing. Now, since I have worked in Asia Pac and worked in China also a long time, I understand their sort of thought process. Now, I'll try to say if manufacturing companies or India has to use this opportunity to take quick advantage of this post-COVID scenario, this little bit like a Cold War, what is happening and all that. Now, if we just turn it around and say, hey, why did China succeed the last 20, 30 years? Behaviorally, as well as the way their entire policy, process, way of engagement, what was different? I would probably term that in three key buckets or three key terms. One was focus. Where they want to win, they focused. Okay? And I'll give you an example. In China, there are specific manufacturing villages, small towns who are focused. So one town is specializing in manufacturing large-scale furniture. Another place, if you go to Guangzhou and those places, there will be large factories around the entire electronic value chain. There are even specialized, and it's quite funny, that in the whole world, there are lots of duplicate paintings. So they have created smaller factory setups where all the world's top paintings are copied all around. Now they have focus. So each of the areas. So in India, if multiple states, towns, depending on what is their advantages, relative advantage, either raw material advantage, existing set of advantage, or maybe a coastal or some other supply chain related advantage. If they focus where they want to win, that is where they should go after. If Coimbatore is focused on, let's say, industrial machinery and automotive value chain, they should focus there. If, let's say, Gujarat has an advantage of maritime proximity, focus there. Chhattisgarh or these places have a proximity around the raw material, focus there. So China did that, and hence they are winning. The second is scale. Where they focus, they try to get everybody out. They try to dwarf everybody. They become the Goliath. So first is focus. The second is achieve scale. Our entire attitude of being MSME focus, incremental, doesn't work. We have a small, short window where we are competing against Brazil, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Southeast Asia, multiple places. We have to achieve scale at speed. So that is the second area we need to do. And that's where probably the also technology, user skilling and all required. And the third is long-term relationships. Make the OEMs and make our other side, both sides of the value chain, dependent on us. They should trust us. They should think we are there for the long term and establish the relationship with a long-term perspective. If we do these things right, focus, scale, and long-term thinking, everything else will fall in place. And the things around it, the policies, process, skills, supply chain facilitation, rest will all fall in place.
Thank you, Mr. Ghoshal, for bringing in that perspective with respect to the global supply chain disruption and how India can take advantage of it. Mr. Sanjay Deshmukh, would you like to share your opinion on this issue from a technology perspective?
Yeah, I think obviously there have been disruptions in the supply chain which were triggered by COVID, but there have been also the factor of US and China competition. There was disruption caused by blockage of the Suez Canal. I think all of these factors have created a sensitization that the supply chain has to be more resilient. So the global manufacturers are looking at alternatives. They are looking at creating that extra sort of agility as well as redundancy to some extent, where they are looking at India. Also, that the Quad is getting initiatives are going on, and Japan, Australia, US, and India are coming together to form that alternatives. I think what opportunity this presents to Indian manufacturers from a supply chain point of view is really the area of digital transformation, because digital transformation really brings a sustainable competitive advantage, and that is what many global manufacturers are looking for. And so this is, I think, an important area from, so they have to embrace, I think, digital technologies so that they become a greater competitive advantage.
Thank you, Mr. Deshmukh. As we already have touched upon the prospects or opportunities for India in the global supply chain post-COVID, the important aspect is the technology. Mr. Anup Wadhwaj, how important is the adoption of advanced automation and manufacturing technologies to make India a global destination for manufacturing?
Well, definitely, it is very, very important. But let me flag one aspect, which is Industry 3.0 or automation has to now become as an essential infrastructure of a factory. Normally, we think of building, we think of electrical power and its distribution, we think of piping, air compressors, material handling equipment as essential parts of that infrastructure. time has come for us to now include automation in that. Because unless you have these electronic based controllers on the shop floor, you will not have the basis for the connectivity and the digitalization which we are now talking about in the Industry 4.0 era. So this is a standard. And when we talk about what we could do with the government and all, we probably can raise and escalate this issue. Because the essentials of quality, the essentials of productivity, the repeatability, safety, all emanate from here. If you don't have this, you don't have the process, you don't have the culture, and you can't run only on one leg of a stool, which is Industry 4.0. So getting this is absolutely essential. Now, you spoke of advanced automation. So the advanced automation can be broken into different kinds of attributes. Let me start again with plant engineering, which is going beyond this factory infrastructure. It is how are you going to lay out the shop floors in a way that you could handle the challenge of customized manufacturing. I'm very glad that Wipro partnered with PARI, because PARI is one of those gems of Indian companies which takes pride in providing the complete line manufacturing equipment. And that's the really one of the key attributes of capability India needs to build. So if you are looking at plant engineering, the simulation will be an simultaneous part of it. Other components would be things like inline vision for quality, so that you don't have end of the line inspection. You'll have to go beyond the CNC machines and have auto loading and auto unloading to improve the productivity. You'll need to look at the autonomous mobile robots, the kind of products Adverb makes. You mentioned about that, Mr. Rao. We have to look at additive manufacturing, because that's again another technology which is coming and going to help us in customized manufacturing. I'd also like to introduce the term called cobots, because these are assisting tools for humans. And as we move towards Industry 5.0, we'll have to look at how every technology is helping humans be more productive. So cobots will certainly be one added element there. And moving now into parts of core digital technology, which is riding on top of advanced automation, I'd like to name digital twin and also this augmented reality, which can be a great sort of service for upgrading maintenance people and giving them visual aids to get the machines back on track. So these are very, very essential, and therefore I would say that the adoption of some of these tools in advanced automation are definitely on, but let's get the basic things in place. Industry 3.0 must be an essential standard for any factory to exist.
Thank you, Mr. Wada, for your remarks on the importance of advanced manufacturing technology for India's becoming a global hub. Mr. Sundar, given your experience of over 3 decades in manufacturing sector, what are your views with respect to the importance of advanced manufacturing technologies for India to gain an edge?
Rakesh, I'll just add on to what Mr. Wadhwa mentioned, and earlier Mr. Samiran mentioned about scale, focus, as well as what Mr. Wadhwa specifically mentioned about is the shop floor attractive to the new generation. If I have to reflect on what we are capable of doing and to what global scale we can take it up, I'm talking about almost 20 years back, 24 years back, Sundaram Fasteners, when they started producing radiator caps, and they talked about global scale radiator caps. In fact, 3 to 4 consecutive years, they won the General Motors Global Award, Zero Defect Award 2 decades back. And every factory of General Motors used to use the radiator caps produced by Sundaram Fasteners in India. And that's global scale, global quality, global consistency. And it is something which is with the advanced automation technologies today, it's much more easier to get it done in our shop floors. And that is something which is what Mr. Wadhwa mentioned about Industry 3.0. There is no escape to go to a digital technology in shop floors when we are not doing simple automation in the factory, which will replace the hazardous or heavy lifting or a manual, menial, repetitive jobs, which makes the shop floor unattractive to the younger generation. And then it's a bridge that we'll have to look at it, that how do we modernize our shop floor? And multiple factories and multiple examples are really coming as an example. And all these are all not so capex intensive as all of us will be thinking about that when it comes to automation. What will be the ROI period, and will it justify the labor cost is still cheaper in India? But the fact is that it's escalating very, very steeply. The labor arbitrage that we used to have, it has already service sector has already is seeming to lose it, and manufacturing sector is also struggling with reference to the escalating labor costs. And the only way that can be countered, unprotecting jobs and increasing jobs, is the scale factor which Mr. Samiran was mentioning. I remember when we did about 25 machines per day in JCB, and 100% of it, all the heavy structures were used to be manually welded. And we had close to about 400 welders doing the manual welding jobs for making that machine. And when we wanted to move the productivity scale from 25 to 100 per day, in fact, the market was not ready for 100 per day. But we said, like, when we move the productivity scale, we will not do that incremental shift. We'll do it into a very high productive shop. Today, of course, they produce much more than 100 per day. But 100 per day scale shift is something which had to be done with automation. We had benchmarked multiple industries which were already moving up the scale in the automation. For example, the Hero factory in Daruheda or in Gurgaon, they're already into a very high level of automation when it comes to two-wheeler manufacturing production. So when we looked at that, we did automation which is very specific areas which is needed. For example, welding is a very difficult job, and and still you will not eliminate 100% of the manual welding, but at least the heavy welding which you will not do, you will do the weld finishes. The operators will get retrained, reskilled into robotic programming, weld cell administration, weld cell management, and those areas. So there are areas which went through this automation journey, the factories which went through this automation journey and reaped huge benefits, because now today if machines are getting exported globally to global scale, global volumes, global quality, and that comes with this investment in automation and Industry 3.0, which Mr. Wadhwa was mentioning. And every aspect of it can be focusedly automated, more with reference to an India-centric solutions is something which is possible. And the employment of what we call as an unskilled labor, where we use their legs and hands only, has to go away from the shop floor practice. We start using their brains, we start using their senses. Semi-skilled and skilled semi-skilled still will be needed, but at least the unskilled, the hierarchy in the manufacturing shop floor, what we say as an unskilled job, that is something which has to get eradicated, which will help us to go to a new age manufacturing. Mr. Rakesh.
Thank you, Mr. Sundar. So before I move on to this next question to Mr. Deshmukh, there is a question from the audience to Mr. Deshmukh itself. Audience wanted to know, one person wanted to know, during his earlier comments, he spoke about competitive advantage. So the person wants to know, he wants to elaborate on that competitive advantage reference that you made. And in addition to that, Mr. Deshmukh, please also, we want to know what is the important role of digital technologies in strengthening the supply chain. So you can take both of them together.
Yeah,
Mr. Deshmukh, over to you.
Thank you. No, I think it's a good question, and I think the your question as well as the audience question will get answered when I elaborate. So I think first of all, when we talk of digital technologies and how they can benefit, the manufacturers or any business owners or managers, is really any manufacturer really wants to know answers to 4 questions. So first is, what happened? So what happened so far, and learning from, those trends for the future. So were there any mistakes, and really getting the insights from your past. The second is, what is happening right now. Okay, so this is really about near real time or real time visibility. I think visibility is very, very important now, especially in these eras of disruption, that where exactly the problem is lying. I think that understanding of that is becoming very, very important. So the entire resiliency comes from the visibility. And second is, you need visibility not only in what is happening in your plant or in the factory of your primary supplier, but also for the larger manufacturer, it's a question of knowing about the secondary suppliers as well as the tertiary suppliers. So getting that visibility is very important. And for that, there is now the digital technologies enable that through real-time or near real-time collection of data through IoT or RFID, and multiple such technologies are now available. The third question that everybody wants to know or is important but has been hard to answer so far is what is going to happen in the future. Okay, so what is really, it's about the area of predictive analytics and the artificial intelligence based technologies. They learn from your data, they learn from the trends, seasonalities, also take into account the events, the disruptive events, and then predict a scenario based future. And I think that's very, very important and critical element of what digital technologies, advanced analytics, visualization techniques enable that. The final important question is what to do. So what to do is really about, what are actions and interventions that you need to take today based on what the predictive technologies are telling you. So you then actually are not only looking at the prediction, but you are actually able to implement those through either automations in your manufacturing processes or in your business processes. So these are the 4 important questions to be answered. And then there are certain enabling technologies which do that. So first, I think the mindset change that is required is treating data as your asset. I think that's the most important thing. And that comes partly from digitalization of your business processes, having those treating data, not only the structured data that you get from your ERP systems, SCM systems, and CRM systems, but also looking at the unstructured data, which is coming from your IoT sensors, for example, or it's coming from your RFID, or it's coming from your images, for quality and defect monitoring, etc., and also for video analytics. So that's the collecting, not only collecting the data, so having that ability to collect the data, but also harness it by unifying it, warehousing it, using technology such as data warehouse, data lakes, and really creating a robust data infrastructure. And that is the enabling technology, which then, the machine learning and artificial intelligence is going to predict for you what is likely to happen in the future. And that's, you are going to become a data-driven organizations, and your decision making is not only intuitive. Intuition is important, but if the intuition is backed by data, analytics, and insight, then that really brings that differentiation. And if you see the companies which are more successful are, the ones which are more digitally savvy, and they automatically gain that competitive advantage because they make these decisions more data driven and make it part of their business and management processes. In terms of artificial intelligence and predictive technologies, where they have been applied in successfully in manufacturing and in supply chain, is one is the entire area of demand forecasting, because I think the demand for your products is the most uncertain element of this. It gets affected by competition, it gets affected by various environmental and economic factors, as well as disruptions. So demand forecasting is, there are many algorithms now available to do it better than what a human is able to do. The second area is the entire, transportation planning, for example, logistics planning, your network planning in terms of warehouse locations. There is geospatial data that is available, which can also be employed for doing all this. And then there is this entire area of predictive maintenance also. For example, in findability sciences, we have worked with a Japanese airline company to predict the days to removal of their engine for predictive maintenance. So aircraft engines being a very expensive piece of equipment, and you cannot have any problems mid-flight. So using IoT sensor based data to predict potential problems in the engine and predicting when a data driven predictive maintenance should be undertaken for that engine. So this is just one example of how digital technologies can be applied to guide your supply chain related decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Deshmukh. We already have touched upon the importance of technology and the role that it plays in making manufacturing competitive, increasing the manufacturing competitiveness. Mr. Kulshetra, we would like to know from you, are you seeing Indian manufacturers ready to embrace or adopt modern technologies? And also, what are the key challenges these companies face while adopting modern or advanced automation solutions?
Yeah, this is a good question, because this is the baseline of what we are talking about, the digital transformation we all look forward to. Automation, including Industry 4.0 technologies, it's a new paradigm which has come in. Integration of cyber physical systems, information communication. So there's a lack of awareness. And let me assure you, the lack of awareness goes to the university levels also. There are hardly few professors who are aware, and students have still not started doing their internship, or there are no papers being addressed at the university level. Then when we come to the workforce level, managers are not very clued up about Industry 4.0 or the automation. See, they're operational people, they're doing their day-to-day work, and we must respect that also. So the basic automation as platform is also not available in many places. Other barriers are mindset, the lack of standards in the way processes are done, because automation requires a lot of linear thinking, linear data, or structured, unstructured data. Then we have a employment disruption, which is another fear, which the moment we introduce the Industry 4.0 concept, so people think that jobs are going to be going. In any case, by the way, as per a study, the job profile is going to change. Huge percentage of the workforce may be in jobs in this decade within, which are not existing today. And there would be upskilling and reskilling required. But then who will show the holistic view again? Cobots, as Mr. Wadhwa brought out, are not seen as one which is collaborating as robots along with them. They see it as if they would be replaced by the robots. There is a high implementation cost. Everybody cannot put robots in their shop floor companies and automate everything. So as somebody brought out in the beginning, we have to look at the layers, as Mr. Ghoshal had brought out. We cannot have one sweeping statement saying that this is not good or bad. The enhanced skills are required. Industry 4.0 or any analytics requires a lot of back-end processing. The real data, the real-time data availability is as useful as what meaning you can make out of that. Then there's a clear lack of understanding on the benefits which people are going to get out of this. There is another fear of security and privacy issues, that what will happen to my data, what is being collated. So that's another fear, that our IT team may not be very willing to have this kind of application sitting with us. obviously there's a compatibility issue because a lot of tools and machines have not been created for integration at the level of cyber physical we are looking at today. So fundamentally, the role of expectations in driving the innovation process is what is a challenge we find in this kind of business.
Thank you, Mr. Kulshetra, for your remarks on that. Mr. Ghoshal, could you like to add to what Mr. Kulshetra has said with respect to challenges that companies face while adopting modern automation solutions?
So I think Mr. Kulshetra touched upon quite a few interesting areas. I'll probably add a couple more onto that, and that's probably a little more fundamental. One is, remember, we are competing or trying to, I won't say replace, but at least show to the rest of the world that we can be the China plus one. We can be that plus one. Now we are competing against a player where, with a complete government support, without much of opposition discussion, they can put all the pegs lined up, right from policies, process, skills, infrastructure, everything lined up. We have a federated setup where nothing works together. Okay, and lots of actual manufacturing companies have to worry about their money tomorrow, whereas the bureaucrats and others who make the decisions on that have no win in that game. So that is the biggest challenge about in a federated democracy like ours, where there is no win for the people who decide to actually get a businessman who is actually running those manufacturing shops and manufacturing setups to work, is the biggest challenge. Now, that other than that, when I have talked to so many of the actual promoters and the CEOs and all that on the ground, as well as the suppliers, manufacturing technologies still today are not treated as mission critical. If you talk to, they think we can still manage without being mission critical. Okay, I have seen cases where people are given budgets to do something about the technologies and create pilots. And I have had very funny pilots coming up that somebody has told them, oh, you can send a drone up the chimney and figure out that there is a maintenance can be monitored. I said, how will you scale this? Do you have such requirements? Okay, and nobody's thought about it. They're just ticking the box. So the biggest issue is the management who really make decisions, the CEOs and operations don't think this is mission critical. Their aspirations are not scaled. Their aspirations are not against. And all the rest of the cogs in the wheel, the decision makers, founders or promoters, government bodies, infrastructure, all that, they don't line up. So these are the biggest challenges in basically getting, adopting these automation technologies and all that, which are something new, which needs to be a little bit like a persistent.
Thank you, Mr. Ghoshal, for that interesting perspective on this particular topic. Mr. Anup Madhva, we know SMEs form a backbone of India's manufacturing network. And we also know for sure that SMEs, to a large extent, find it difficult to adopt modern technologies. So what are your views on this particular thing?
We have historically adopted this term of small, medium, and then we added micro. But this is a term which the IT industry does not borrow. They call their startups as startups, and that's a very positive sort of attribute. I don't think the word small makes any sense anymore. What we are actually trying to talk about are entrepreneurial driven organizations versus the large corporatized organizations. And there it's important to recognize that the entrepreneur brings in a lot of personal vibrancy to the game, to the table. Now, these entrepreneurs who were startups maybe 10 years back or 20 years back, have gone through the mundane, have gone through the, the downside spirals, everything they have sustained. And now it's time for us to see that they are not kept vulnerable. Now, why I use the word vulnerable is because the World Economic Forum has recognized that India has a large percentage of industry which stands to be eliminated when Industry 4.0 comes. And therefore, it's our job to protect them and make them victorious. So I'd say the vibrant, vulnerable need to be made victorious. 3 V's. Now, where is the challenge for an entrepreneur? The challenge is he has to put his time where the fire is. So if today the bank is not giving him the credit line, he has to rush to the bank. If there is a COVID case, he has to rush and attend to that. If there is a customer default, there is a problem of quality, he has to rush to that. What these people do not have is what we need to complement and give. So for instance, they don't have staff which has come out of a cross-disciplinary educational system. They don't have process thinking champions. They don't have the ability to outsource high-end jobs like simulation software companies. They don't have access to doing proof of concept without investing money. They don't have access to what is called as test beds. And their staff also do not have networking opportunities to learn from a peer group in other companies. So definitely they have far more challenges, but purely because they have the passion, we would definitely, be sort of in the right direction if we put policies, programs, systems, infrastructure, which can make them win. Because 50% of India's manufacturing is in their hands. If they win, everybody wins. And most important is, let's not forget, Industry 4.0 has come in with a promise of customized manufacturing or personalized manufacturing. And where can you get that except in sectors of, consumer goods or processed food? And these are great areas where you need distributed manufacturing. You have raw materials available in different pockets of India. There's no point in having very, very large centralized factories and then shipping. You can have smaller units in each state, and they are doing their, full order fulfillment. I remember I was talking to a friend who used to run this bread company, and he said the challenge for him was to be able to serve bread within a few hours of its manufacture. Now, how can you send bread from north to south? You can't. It has to be within 100 kilometers range. So you need large, success stories in this entrepreneur-driven sector. And I think that's going to also set up a virtuous cycle of restoring manufacturing back to its pristine glory.
Thank you, Mr. Wada, for your remarks. Mr. Deshmukh, we would like to know your opinion on this whole idea of adopting modern technologies by SMEs, especially from the AI-driven or AI-enabled products and technologies.
Right. So I think the MSME sector, like Anup Madhwaji mentioned, of course they do have challenges, but from a technology provider's point of view, I would say that definitely the barriers to adoption of modern technologies are reducing. The reason why that is happening is, there was a time when the softwares or the hardware had to be installed on premise, but nowadays there is migration to cloud-based technologies, SaaS solutions. So what this does is that all these technologies, quite a few of them are available as a service. So firstly, the big barrier, which was in terms of upfront capital investment, that is reduced. So basically, many times you can buy these technologies on a pay as you use basis, so which reduces the capital investment barrier, and you can try those technologies at a relatively low cost or at an affordable scale. Even if your scale is small, those are still accessible to you. So I think this is first element to be kept in mind. The other is that as a result of these being cloud-based or being more interoperable or better connected, the entire ecosystem is easier to connect and talk to each other. So this makes it easier to adopt in your current ecosystem. I wouldn't say that it's all all the challenges have been resolved, but I think there is progress towards adoption by companies which are small in size or medium scale in size, but they still have access to those technologies. So I think I would call this as a democratization, which is happening, and that is to the benefit of MSME sectors. Yes, to some extent, some technical skills may still be required, but the scale at which it is needed and that investment is, I think, much reduced compared to what it was in the past. And there is progress happening on a day-to-day basis. So as a result, I would say that there are some challenges, but the challenges and barriers to the adoption of modern technologies are reduced. So I think I would encourage people to explore and take advantage of what is available.
Thank you, Mr. Deshmukh. Mr. Sundar, you have experience of the manufacturing industry. You have worked earlier with OEM, and now you are with the vendor, like you are providing automation solution. Given your experience of last 30 years, are you seeing lack of availability of skilled manpower an area of concern for the industry?
Yes, Rakesh. Actually, the key element, as Mr. Wadhwa mentioned and Samiran mentioned, is going to be the skill and the skill linked to the scale in manufacturing. When we talk about skill, see the generation one, the people's perception and the younger generation willing to work for the shop floor is one aspect of it, one dimension. The second dimension is with reference to the technology that needs to come to the grassroots level. So when we talk about an ITA or a diploma institute which provides the shop floor manpower, be it in MSME or into the OEM sector, the skill set that comes in and the training which is provided there has to be radically different from what it was a decade back. So it's not about running a lathe, loading a job into the lathe and then unloading the job from the lathe, and that's not the skill. Stop of the machine and material movement is not the skill that we are looking at, and we are looking at the composite integrated manufacturing technology for which they have to be trained. Starting from a 3D model, understanding of the 3D model to a CAD/CAM, and a CAD/CAM loading to the machine, and then tool compensation. How do we adjust the preventive maintenance or predictive maintenance, which Milind mentioned about this, and what Sanjay mentioned related to the real-time collection of data. What are all the sensors which are integrated into this 5-axis CNC machine, which the operator has to be alert to pick up the signals and then react to that, and not just stopping with that, even right up to the part to be taken for a 3D CMM, qualifying for the parameters for which the job is being done. That holistic skill development program is what which is lacking. I'm sure a lot of efforts have been put in. In fact, the National Skill Development Program, which Mr. Wadhwa can elaborate later as well, has given good level of percolation for modernization in ITIs and diploma institutes, and they also diploma, for example, the diploma curriculum should cover completely the PLC programming, the robotic programming, skills related to the digital technology, and those areas, lot of involved curriculum development and dissemination of technology should happen there. And not just that, infrastructure development there, the trainers and the tutors in those colleges is going to be the major barrier, and how they are going to be reskilled and how they are going to be providing this knowledge to those shop floor team is also going to be essential. I think that gap is something which is essential for us to bridge in our global journey for manufacturing.
Thank you, Mr. Sundar. Mr. Kushitra, would you like to add on to it? And as already mentioned, we are talking about a lot of skill development and upskilling needed in this area of Industry 4.0. What are your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I think my previous panelists have very nicely brought out, and I do agree that this is one of the most important things, not for today only, it's for the future. Whatever India is looking at, if we are not able to cope up internationally because of lack of skill or knowledge or awareness, I think we are going to be at a very negative rate of growth as the world is evolving. So government has taken a lot of steps. They have put in, I have heard Mr. Wadhwa's lot of speeches, which brings out the Center for Industry 4.0 lab in Pune. IIT Delhi, AI are very closely working. Obviously, a lot of effort is going on to skill up people. IIC Bangalore is directly involved. Then Bangalore CMTI has got a place where they're training and teaching about it. Then the IIT Kharagpur, not to be forgotten, has been one of the pioneers, as I was talking to the professor there. So, by the way, even defense sector has started placing importance in Industry 4.0. The Lucknow Center, which has come up as a part of the defense corridor, has one unit for Industry 4.0. That's very encouraging. And as Mr. Deshmukh had also brought out, I do some defense analysis also. Our industrial support for the military is going to be what is going to win the war. And today it's a hybrid war. If our industries are, killed by China, effectively we don't have the strength to fight for longer duration. So Quad Australia example has already come in the discussion. So coming back to the topic of skilling and upskilling, I think we require to look at the very simple factor. We try to make manufacturing execution system freely available. Colleges are not able to see the topic because HODs, as I have mentioned out, are not aware about this topic. We try to get into MOUs with them that we are going to train them, because when we started our journey, we realized that there is a serious problem in terms of educational institute not seeing the meaning in Industry 4.0 or the automation from the industry perspective. So what we have tried to do is to dovetail their internship along with Industry 4.0 kind of a training. We try to make it very nominal. We have even given free of cost done by the OEM and by us, spending our time, so that students can get an internship in Industry 4.0. We have been able to train about 65 students. And we have attached, for a very practical reason, as everybody's senior panelist here, we want them to have a hands-on, experience also. So only few of them have been able to actually do a project out of it. And we have made it very important that you must do a project. So only 50% students have been able to achieve that. So this is the ground reality. So this is the problem. And I think it's an important trigger for our growth as India nation.
Thank you, Mr. Kushitra, for your remarks. As we approach the closing of this webinar, we would like to take a common question to all the panelists, and that is, what are your suggestions to the government to propel the adoption of advanced technologies? Starting with Mr. Anup Wadhwa.
I think, to my mind, two things really come. One is the government's role in policy making, and the other is the government's role in building people capability. Processes are best left to the companies concerned. Now, when it comes to the policy for Industry 4.0 or advanced manufacturing technology, or when it comes to Atmanirbhar Bharat, I think that segmented approach of being absolutely clear what are the essential industries which we want to be able to serve, coupled with the transparency of what is it which is going to encourage local manufacturing. Is it going to be only tariff-based concessions, or is also going to be rewarding those who have already achieved a quality standard? Now, what comes to my mind is like the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has made it easy for people to understand if they are buying an appliance with 5-star energy efficiency or 3-star energy efficiency. Indian consumers also deserve to know whether the products they are buying from manufacturers how are they rated on the quality aspect. And any segment where Indian manufacturing capability is up to a good standard of quality, they need to be encouraged to the hilt, because if we are got that critical mass, we can certainly scale up. Where we are not good in quality, perhaps you can restrict imports in those areas, with a caveat that over a long term, there will be policies for Indians to step in and see if they want to take a share of the pie. When it comes to capability, the model like Mr. Milind was mentioning, the Samarth centers. Samarth is Smart Advanced Manufacturing and Rapid Transformation Hub, which takes care of the holistic needs of all the technologies. And let's not underestimate Industry 4.0. Why are people calling it a revolution? There has to be a good reason. And to my mind, the revolution is that there will be an unleashing of so much value when multiple technologies are harnessed. And we have only seen a few of them. We have yet to see the 5G come into play, right? So when all these technologies of AI, 5G, automation, robotics, digital twin, they all are there, this manufacturing will be a completely new world. And it'll be a new animal. It'll be a new tiger, but it can also be great excitement. And I think we owe it to the next generation, not only in engineering colleges like the IITs, but also down the diploma chain, the technicians chain. It's a great technology to enhance one's skills, one's value, one's contribution, and great place to work. So these are some of the areas where I think the government can step in. More centers are needed, but more importantly, we've also got to learn to collaborate amongst the centers. Otherwise, we'll always remain, subcritical. The scaling up also has to happen by our coming together and seeing what can we do.
Mr. Ghoshal, what are your suggestions to the government?
I'll probably be short, sweet in the discussion. I'll say only two things: facilitate and get out of the way. Okay, so put the right processes and policies in place, and then don't come in the way are the only two things I will say. And one last point: at the end of the day, whatever policies government makes, the execution happens at the state level. Okay, so I think it's very important that in a federal setup like us, the central government works closely with the state governments, and probably industries have to align depending on which industry and where they are, and what advantages they want to work with the respective state governments. That is where the real things happen on the ground.
Thank you. Mr. Kushetra, what are your thoughts on the government aspect?
I think government has already identified a lot of these problem areas, gray areas. Like if they want 1 trillion from the manufacturing sector, they understand that a lot has to be put as an effort. So I think government has also identified that core technologies is going to be the manufacturing bottom line. One is identification of the problem, but the implementation at the ground level is a totally different story in our country. We all are aware about that. The mother technologies have to come in as a core technology. So my recommendation is that if an ecosystem for R&D for manufacturing technology could be established as a very strong purpose field, we are likely to see some changes. It just cannot be ad hoc, and it has to be a top-driven approach. That is what I can recommend for the budget 2022. Thank you.
And yeah, Mr. Deshmukh, what are your suggestions to the government?
I think we have to remember and recognize that government is an important participant. They are a large manufacturer themselves as a result of the public sector presence that they have. Second is they're large buyer and consumer of what the SMEs and manufacturers are producing. So I think there is a lot of scope for Government of India and all the public sector to lead by example. So whatever we are talking about in terms of digital India, so I think that has been very successfully implemented on the payment side, benefit transfer, and many areas. But I think that can be seriously now looked at in terms of setting up the infrastructure for digital supply chain, connected supply chain. And government can definitely implement policies starting with itself, which can then act as a prime mover and also as an example for the rest of the manufacturing sector. And overall, government has the ability to invest. So, they can do that and really start that virtuous cycle of investment in these Industry 4.0 and digital technologies.
Mr. Sundar, what are your thoughts with respect to the government's support to propel the advanced technologies?
Okay, in the context of our topic and discussions today, I would emphasize that the capital goods equipment manufacturing sector needs much more attention and focus, because we still rely about 60 to 70% of our process equipments, factory setup equipments come from abroad. For example, if a large car plant has to be set up here, the level of the assembly lines or the paint shops or the vertical integration which is happening on the process side, many of them still the equipments are imported, and there is the native technology in this area has to be grown and incentivized. I'm happy that, of course, with Wipro Pari, as Mr. Wadhwa mentioned earlier, we are one of the largest automation provider in the country and have a global scale now, reaching out multiple countries in the world. But essentially, still the incentives which are needed for capital goods equipment needs attention from the government side.
Thank you, Mr. Sundar. So before we wind up, there are a couple of questions from the audience which I would like to take. So first question is addressed to Mr. Sundar. So the person wants to know what is the impact, what is the post-COVID impact on the Vision 2023 on Indian industries. Probably he wants to know what is going to be the impact of what will be the post-COVID impact on the Indian industries.
Okay, while there is an economic setback in terms of the productivity loss and there is a setback in terms of the growth, but I would say there is a positive side to this pandemic to the manufacturing industry, primarily with reference to infusion of these automation and digitization. The remote monitoring and control, which many industries would not have really thought through, because the physical presence of the supervisor in the shop floor is what is going to be helping them to understand whether the production is happening. I think the pandemic has taught to the industries that now we need to monitor remotely, diagnose remotely and control on those areas. And especially on the automation side also, on the shop floor level, there is definitely an impetus which we could see in the industry. The investment focus is coming in. That's what I would say has been at the impact, positive side of the impact for Indian industry.
Thank you. Another question is to Mr. Wadhwa. So the audience wants to know, in is Industry 4.0 not in favor of labor-intensive economy like India? Does it replaces jobs on the shop floor?
I did answer that question on the text, but I would sort of speak it out again. Human-centric jobs. If we take one example of design, that can get tremendous value addition by using digital tools. Let's take the other end when we talk of labor intensive, which is material handling, typically loading and unloading operations. That also can get tremendous value addition in terms of productivity when we look at the use of cobot as assistant to these workers. Now, if you can look at a solution holistically, keeping the human in mind, you will not need to replace the human. You will always think of adding more value to the human. But many a times when you go for a knee-jerk reaction and you start blaming human labor for being, less productive or less imaginative, that's the time you create, this bifurcation, and you say, let's eliminate this person and let's put an automated tool in place. So I think this is really the onus on leadership at every level to recognize that humans are at the core of every enterprise. Even the machines has been designed by humans. Industry 4 has been designed by humans. So if you need to have, a sustainable operation, you've got to be able to figure out this balance between making the technology for the human so that at the end, it's always a win-win situation.
Thank you, Mr. Wadhwa. With this, we come to an end of this webinar. I would like to thank all our eminent panelists for sharing their valuable insight on an important topic. There are more questions that coming in, but we are sorry we are running out of time, so we could not take it, but definitely would like to try to answer them over email or something. So I would like to thank our audience who has been really interactive throughout this webinar. We would like to see you again in our next webinar on a 3i Expo series that is scheduled for February 9th, 2022. And the topic for the next webinar is Industry 4.0 Technologies for Manufacturing Sustainability. Till then, please stay safe and stay healthy. And thank you once again for all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.